Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is 5:30 p.m. and the live stream and recording has commenced. You may begin your meeting.
Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. I see, good afternoon, Council, members of the town staff, and residents. I see that we have quorum for this meeting, so I will call it into session. This public meeting under the Planning Act on Wednesday, November the 12th at 5:30 p.m. Next on the agenda is the Land Acknowledgement Statement, and I have the pleasure of reading that today. The town of Pelham is situated on treaty land, steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hadawandawunk, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island live and work in Niagara. Town of Pelham stands in solidarity with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, acknowledging that our high standard of living is the result of the resources and lasting friendship of Indigenous peoples. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we proceed with the adoption of the agenda, I do have some opening remarks. Public meeting under the Planning Act, November 12th at 5:30 p.m. This public meeting under the Planning Act is being held in a hybrid format, allowing for both in-person attendance and remote participation where requested. It is important to note that no decisions have been made in advance of this meeting, and none will be made this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to provide information and receive input from council and the public. The Planning Department will present details regarding the subject application, and following this presentation, members of the public will have an opportunity to provide verbal submissions. Please note that no answers will be provided to questions raised during the public portion of the meeting. Council and the Planning Department will receive and consider all verbal submissions, as well as any written submissions received prior to or following this meeting. Questions or comments may be addressed by the Planning Department through the recommendation report, which will be brought forward to Council at a future meeting. Public meetings under the Planning Act are formal meetings requiring decorum. This means that all comments are to be made through the chair. If you've pre-registered to speak virtually or will be participating in person, you'll be provided an opportunity to address council at the public portion of the meeting. If someone ahead of you has made the same comments that you wish to make, there's no need to repeat the same comment, and please keep all comments concise. Inappropriate comments or behavior such as clapping will not be tolerated, and if decorum is lost at any point throughout the meeting may be recessed and persons asked to leave. If you wish to provide additional comments to the Planning Department prior to the preparation of the recommendation report, or if you would like to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the planner responsible for the application in writing as soon as possible. And we are joined today by Lindsay Richardson, as well as the Director of Planning, Ms. Dusling. There's also a sign-up sheet at the front of the room. If you'd like to leave your contact information, you're welcome to do so. And Mr. Mayor, given the strong public interest on this matter this evening, and to ensure that everyone is able to speak, I understand that the recommendation is to allow each individual one opportunity to speak, as well as to keep comments to a maximum of 5 minutes per person. And with council's unanimous consent, we can proceed with that in that manner this evening. Okay, seeing no objection, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to the adoption of agenda. And I have an amendment put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that the agenda be amended to include item 6.1.2, which is the memo from the Planning Department, as well as 6.2.1, additional public input. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. After viewing the agenda, any council member have any questions or comments? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed? To the clerk, motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to the motion as amended. Again, I have this moved by Councillor Hildebrand that the agenda for the November 12th, 2025 public meeting under the Planning Act, special meeting of Committee of the Whole, be adopted as amended. To Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, questions? Not seeing any. On the agenda as amended, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Seeing none objected, motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to item 5, disclosure of pecuniary interests.
After viewing the agenda, any council member have a pecuniary interest to declare? Not seeing any. I ask the clerk to please note that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that brings us to item 6, and I will now read the introductory remarks. Housekeeping zoning bylaw amendment. The Planning Act requires under Section 34 that council must hold at least one public meeting to inform the public about the proposed amendment. This public meeting has been called to satisfy that requirement. Notice of the statutory public meeting was published on October 23rd, 2025 on the town's website under both the public notices section and the specific project page. It was also posted to the town's social media platforms and posted on the Voice of Pelham's website at pelhamtoday.ca. Additionally, a copy of the notice was emailed to all relevant commenting agencies and all interested stakeholders who have provided contact information through direct contact with the planning department. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments that any member of the public may wish to offer. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the planning department in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is available on the town's website and will be displayed on the last slide of the staff presentation to follow. If a person or public body would otherwise have an opportunity to appeal the decision of the Town of Pelham to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but they do not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Pelham before the bylaw is passed, they are not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we emphasize that at this stage, no decisions have been made regarding the proposed amendments, and therefore, any comments received will be considered by council. And to you, Mr. Mayor, I do welcome Lindsay Richardson. She will be presenting this file.
Thank you. Ms. Richardson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening. I'm just going to share my screen if I can. There we go. Okay, bear with me. Wasn't the right format. There we go. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good evening again, and good evening to council, my fellow colleagues, and members of the public. As Ms. Leach alluded to, the purpose of this statutory public meeting is to provide information and receive feedback on a proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw, which addresses several housekeeping changes that have been identified by staff. Will it move? Jody, I might need your help. It's not moving.
Do you want to stop sharing?
Yeah. Sorry about this.
Deputy Mayor, while we're having the technical problems, please take your seat. Thank you.
See, just giving him time. Just giving him time to get here. Thanks, Jody. We can go to the next slide. So the project overview for this, just a little bit of background for those of you that might not know. The town's current zoning bylaw was approved by the Ontario Land Tribunal on April 3rd in 2023. Save and except for some site-specific lands that are identified on Appendix A of that decision. As town staff have had the opportunity to monitor and use the new zoning bylaw, items have been identified for change to clarify regulations, provide consistency, and improve the functionality of the document. This is typically done on a yearly basis. Town staff review the zoning bylaw to identify regulations and definitions that need to be updated. This can be based on new provincial legislation, inquiries from council or the public, or stem from Planning Act applications that have been received by staff. These proposed amendments are intended to clarify or correct minor issues within the zoning bylaw and do not fundamentally alter the purpose or intent of the bylaw. A previous housekeeping amendment was undertaken in 2023 and was approved in March of 2024. Notice, again, as Ms. Leach alluded to, notice of this amendment was provided in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, a process that staff undertakes for any zoning amendment, whether it be town-initiated or an applicant-led site-specific amendment. This included providing notice electronically on the town's website, on the project page, to necessary agencies and members of the public who had requested notice. In addition to this public meeting, staff has also hosted 2 public open house sessions last week, and staff have also met with the development community through a developers roundtable event earlier this month, as well as with the town's agricultural advisory committee, the Pelham Greenhouse Growers Group, and a number of private citizens at their request. Next slide, please. So because this is a housekeeping amendment, it does apply to most sections of the zoning bylaw. It truly does affect all lands within the town of Pelham, except lands that are subject to Niagara Escarpment Development Permit Control. That's an area of the town that is covered by the Niagara Escarpment Plan. It also does not apply to properties that are subject to current scoped appeals of the existing zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. So there are a number of policies and plans that apply when reviewing a zoning bylaw amendment. First and foremost, any amendment to the bylaw must be in keeping with the policies of the provincial planning statement, which specifically states that the PPS provides policy direction on matters of provincial interest related to land use planning and development. Zoning and development permit bylaws are an important implementing tool for the provincial planning statement and should be forward-looking, facilitating opportunities for an appropriate range and mix of housing options for all of Ontario. The town also has lands that fall under the Greenbelt Plan, which protects farmland, forests, wetlands, and watersheds in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, while also preserving communities' cultural heritage and supporting recreation and tourism. We also have lands in the Niagara Escarpment Plan area, which establishes land use designations and development criteria to protect the Niagara Escarpment as a continuous natural environment feature, while allowing only compatible development. Finally, the town's zoning bylaw must maintain and have regard to the town's official plan, which is currently with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for approval. These proposed amendments are in keeping with the current official plan, which was approved in 2012, but have also been prepared with consideration to the policies of the new plan and that of the Region of Niagara's official plan, which is now under municipal jurisdiction until the 2025 new official plan is approved. Next slide, please. So I'm going to kind of run through some of the proposed changes that we're looking at. So in Section 2, which is our definition section, we're looking at rewording some of the definitions to clarify or provide consistency with definitions in other documents or bylaws. We're also looking at definitions to better clarify or describe uses and terms within the bylaw. Some examples of these changes include renaming and updating additional needs housing, which is formerly known as homes for special care, and renaming and updating the definition for additional residential units. Both of these definition changes are due to new provincial names for things, basically. We're also looking at updating the definition for building height to clarify its calculation for various types of roof pitches, and looking at updates to the definitions of things like finished grade, floor area, lot coverage, for better clarification on how these are calculated. Internally, we know how to calculate them, but when folks are reading the bylaw, they're not understanding how we're making those calculations work. So this is just to sort of clarify that for everyone. Next slide, please. So Section 3 is our general provisions section, and these are regulations that generally apply town-wide. And we're looking at making a number of changes in this section. Some examples of that include changes to our ag-related and on-farm diversified use regulations to increase flexibility and better promote a wide array of agricultural uses in the town. We're also looking at an increase in additional residential unit sizes in the rural area to allow for greater flexibility. Typically in the rural area, we do see larger homes, so it does make sense to permit a slightly larger ARU in those areas. We're also looking at some changes to the, again, this is the additional needs housing to promote flexibility for the specialized use, and this replaces a section we already had on homes for special care. We're looking at some home occupation regulations that have been updated to reflect best practices, and also regulations for established building line to allow for greater front yard setback flexibility, especially for infill projects in established neighborhoods. Next slide, please. And section 4 is our parking section, and not doing too much here, but we've definitely looked at updating standards for parking calculation, including provisions for off-site parking as an option for required parking, and also adding a bit more clarity for acceptable parking surfaces in the urban area, including requirements for low-impact development to ensure consistency with our town's engineering standards. Next slide, please. And then in terms of our agricultural section, we are looking at separating a hoop house from a commercial greenhouse and providing new zone regulations for specific to hoop house uses. This was sort of done because they're two very different uses. So we felt that they needed to be separate and handled separately. We're also looking at removing the requirement for site plan control in the Greenbelt, and this is due to new provincial legislation, which does not allow us to do that anymore for residential uses. In the residential section, we're looking at removing the requirement for a maximum front yard in all residential zones and replacing that clause with a requirement for front-facing garage setbacks. And again, this is to allow more flexibility for residential building, and especially when we have sort of larger, longer lots where it doesn't make sense to have that maximum, that house can be set back a little bit further. And then finally, in our couple of our commercial zones, we're just looking at including a couple of new uses. These uses fit within the context of other permitted uses in these zones, so it makes sense to have them be permitted there. We have also kind of clarified, we had these zones also permit sort of apartment and townhouse dwellings, and we didn't really have any regulations around that. So now we have clarified that there are specific regulations for those uses and where those can be found. Next slide, please. And finally, in our other zone section, we're looking at making modifications to the permitted uses within the institutional zone to correspond to the new provincial definition, which has also been updated through our definition section. And that has been included in this housekeeping amendment as well. Next slide, please. And as Ms. Leach said, I want to take this opportunity to be very clear. No decisions are being made at this meeting, and staff will be taking all comments that have been received back to review and make changes as necessary and where we're able to. As noted, none of these proposed changes alter the fundamental purpose or intent of the bylaw and are being proposed to create a more comprehensive and effective bylaw for the town. A full comprehensive review of the zoning bylaw will be undertaken in its entirety when the new 2025 official plan is approved by the province, and this will likely occur in 2026. Thank you. And that is it for me. I do want to say thank you for participating. We do truly value the input that we have received so far, and look forward to hearing the comments from folks. I do want to add as well, written comments can still be submitted up until probably about the end of the month would be great. So feel free to reach out to me and provide any feedback or written comments. I'm happy to take it in and happy to review it as part of our sort of final recommendation. So again, thank you everyone, and I will turn it back over to the mayor.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, Ms. Richardson. I'll turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to the public portion of the meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to just remind the gallery that each speaker is allotted 5 minutes to address council. The mayor will provide you a courtesy warning as your time approaches, so you can wrap up your thoughts. When you come forward to the podium, please ensure that the microphone is turned on. There is an on, and it will turn green when it is on. We also ask that you begin by stating your name for the record. You're not required to state your address, but you're welcome to if that assists your comments. And Mr. Mayor, we do have 2 pre-registered speakers to start us off this evening, so I would invite Mr. Svab up to the podium.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Mrs. Vob, and I look forward to your presentation.
Mr. Mayor, Town Council, Town staff, thanks for the opportunity to say a few words here. All right. Where'd my presentation go? Is that it? There it is, sorry. I got 4 broad topics I want to talk about here. Structure and uses, lot coverage, waste stream, and some general thoughts around communication and bylaw transparency. Actually, this didn't start. Structure and uses. When you look at the town's comprehensive zoning plan bylaws, it has a phrase in there called physical structures are allowed. And the intent here is the town, in the rest of its bylaws, actually refers to physical structures as things to be regulated. Physical structures are allowed, and I'm going to go deeper into 6.2.1. These are permitted use. This is right out of the town's bylaws in regards to zone R2. And reading through it quickly, the first 3 or 4 items talk about structures: single detached dwellings, duplexes, semi-detached. And then as you go down the list, it starts talking about uses. So when I read that in a bylaw, my assumption is the town is trying to regulate both physical structures and uses in the context of that bylaw. And this one specifically refers to R2. It gets a little confusing when there are actually conflicts between uses and structures. And I'm trying to understand if a development needs to meet a physical description to comply with the bylaw. If it doesn't meet that description, does it not comply? And if a building has a complying use, will it be permitted if it doesn't meet a physical description? What are we attempting to regulate here? I'm a little unsure. Continuing with R2, I will point out that in the town bylaws themselves, they give a very exacting definition of what a triplex is. And right now within R2, there are 2 triplexes being constructed, and they are not in the town's bylaws as permitted structures. So I will read out a triplex: a building that is divided horizontally into 3 sections or 3 units, each which has an independent entrance and directly through a common vestibule. This is defined in the town's zoning bylaws as to what a triplex is. I will go through this very quick, given the time limit here. But here we're getting to the concept of maximum dwellings. Nowhere in the town bylaws that I can find do we put a limit on the maximum allowable dwellings for any zone or any place. It seems to be tied to the structure, and then if you take that like a duplex, and then you look at the number of dwellings a duplex could have, plus an ASU, you could end up with 4 or 5 or 6 or multiple dwellings on a legal lot. I don't know what the town's intent is with not limiting the number of dwellings, but my recommendation at this point is we should modify our bylaws to not allow more than 3 dwellings per legal lot. And that would be the sum of the primary, secondary, and ASUs. Just put a cap on it town-wide. I know you'll have to deal with exceptions around apartments and condos and things like that, but keep it simple in this regards. Also, modify our bylaws that both physical building descriptions and dwellings both must be complied with to get approval. When I look at R2, like I said, triplexes aren't listed there. We are building a triplex, and it got approved, and I'm having a great deal of difficulty understanding how that happened. Okay, moving on. Lot coverage. Oh, thanks. So this is an example of a build that's going on right now. The orange areas and the reddish area there are the calculations that are within the town bylaw. Right now, there's a max limit of 50% coverage. And I think this basically is calculated based on anything above ground up in the air. So this is the foundation and that other room. So that's 50% coverage. That's the maximum allowable per the town bylaw, and that's what we're seeing there in this area. If you move on, what I've highlighted here in black and gray, this is other man-made structures that are being putting on the property. The black is the parking lot, driveway, the gray are sidewalks, etc. The green border around the whole thing are the lot lines. So when you look at this, your first impression is there's a lot more ground being covered there than 50%. It's probably 80, 90%, something like that. And I don't want to be too blunt here, but this has more in common with a strip mall than it does in the residential neighborhood that it's being built. So I encourage council to rethink what coverage should be measuring and what the numbers should be. This is what 50% coverage looks like right now in our neighborhood. It basically fills up the lot. I won't go through all this in detail, but it specifically talks about coverage under different uses and structures. Again, my recommendation on coverage is broaden or add thresholds that also encompass ground coverage, parking lots, driveways, etc. We like to see green grass, and we're not seeing it in this most recent build example.
1 minute to go, Mrs. Bob.
Pardon, 1 minute?
1 minute.
Yeah, I was going to have a time. Waste
you.
stream. Currently, the town doesn't regulate waste stream. In this particular build, there's 8 units going where there used to be 1. 8 dwellings going in place where there used to be 1. 8 times 4 waste streams, there's 32 bins that need to be put out on the street every week. And we don't see where in that space, in the physical space on the lot, where those bins are going to be stored. There's no garages or accessory structures to store them. So we're a little concerned about waste handling in this regard. Communication, concept of no surprises. I think we're all living through an event right now that is a little bit undesirable. And a lot of that came out of the surprise that people in that development just over had to deal with. I think the town needs to make an effort to identify stakeholders of things like this a little bit more broadly. I know there's a legal requirement, and my understanding is there was no necessity to give residents notice about what was going on here, and I think that may be a part of the problem dealing with the little fiasco we got going on right now. Bylaw transparency. Getting deep into this, I was a little bit disappointed in seeing how the town handles its documents on the website. As a resident, my only tool, primary tool, is that website and the planning and zoning webpage. And what I have found that the links there have been dated and inaccurate, and I've spent time doing research on obsolete documents. So I encourage the town to kind of improve that. And what I'm looking for in the good documentation practices is the inclusion of effectivity dates and published dates in your documents when you put them on the website. So when you publish something, I also want to know when it's going to be effective. All right, that's the conclusion of my formal presentation. Am I out of time?
Yes.
Okay.
But please understand that your presentation in its whole part will be reviewed by the planning staff.
Okay.
So even the parts that you skipped over or only mentioned lightly, planning staff will be looking at those in depth. So even though you weren't allowed to perhaps speak as
Well,
long
I
as you
finished my
wanted.
presentation, but I had some other areas in the book.
No, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Blythe Ryan. And the microphone is on, so.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to your presentation.
Ms. LeGros can assist you if you need any help pulling it up.
Good evening. My name is Blythe Ryan, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of my mother, Michelle Masilovich. She is a resident and taxpayer who must delegate this duty because she fears further intimidation from this town's administration will severely impact her professional standing. I was a witness to the intimidation she faced. When she raised concerns about zoning and transparency, she faced immediate reprisal. At a recent public meeting, she was silenced and threatened with removal. When a bylaw officer escalated the situation, my sister had the police called on her for simply intervening. Furthermore, my mom's Freedom of Information documents prove senior administration falsely labeled her a public nuisance, accused her of civil disobedience, and inferred she was a physical threat to staff. All of that because she exercised her lawful right to question how our town is being governed. This is why I'm here tonight, delivering her words. Because what is happening again through this so-called housekeeping amendment has already been exposed over in recent memory, silencing public scrutiny by disguising real policy changes as clerical updates. My purpose is simple. My purpose is simple, to urge Council to vote no on the housekeeping amendment. This amendment cannot legally be considered housekeeping because it changes the meaning and application of your zoning bylaw. Under the Planning Act, Council, not staff, is the final authority. You are responsible for ensuring every zoning change follows the required Section 34 process, a formal public notice, a staff report, and a public meeting. You also have the authority to refuse this bylaw, to request an independent legal review, and to separate technical edits from policy shifts. That is your duty, to hold administration accountable and to protect the public interests. In March 2024, a previous housekeeping amendment was passed. That one quietly changed definitions, density limits, and secondary dwelling language. Those were substantive zoning decisions, not typographical corrections, and they directly affected subsequent approvals, like the cluster build on Emmett Street. That mistake is why Council cannot blindly accept that this year's package is minor. The appendix describes major policy revisions with harmless words like clarify, update, terminology, or align with PPS. Those soft phrases do not describe the hard policy changes they enact. They mislead both Council and the public. Here are 4 examples from the town's own chart detailing how the proposed language changes rather than clarifies the law. Example 1. Social policy expansion, Section 3.11. Staff calls it a clarification, changing homes for special care to additional needs for housing. The reality, it adds a new housing category in every zone, constituting a significant policy expansion, not a definition fix. Example 2, residential density, Section 3.29. Staff calls it an update terminology, changing secondary dwelling units to additional residential units. The reality, it increases size limits, removes variant requirements, and adds a brand new clause I'll read in a moment. This is a profound change to residential density rules. Example 3, environmental oversight, Section 5.2.13. Staff calls it delete redundant text regarding the Greenbelt/Natural Heritage System. The reality, the deletion removes site plan control, immediately reducing environmental oversight in environmentally sensitive areas. Example 4, commercial land use, Sections 8.1 to 8.4. Staff calls it a move to clarify permitted use in commercial zones. The reality, it adds entirely new land uses like vehicle service stations and veterinary clinics, brand new enterprises that were previously excluded from those zones. This pattern of soft wording hides hard consequences. It is the public's job to question it and the Council's job to scrutinize it. Now for the most serious example, Section 3.29.1, bracket B, bracket X, quoted directly from the amendment. Notwithstanding Section X, a detached accessory structure legally established on or before the date of passing of this bylaw may contain a detached accessory dwelling unit, provided all other provisions are met, and no openings are added to a wall that would not otherwise comply. That one word, notwithstanding. It overrides existing sections and retroactively legalizes any detached accessory dwelling that didn't meet past zoning or fire separation standards. It wipes away non-compliance and shields prior approvals from challenge. This is not housekeeping. It is a legislation pardon for unlawful construction. Housekeeping cannot rewrite history or excuse prior errors. Residents who attended the so-called drop-in open house last week were told not to ask questions aloud. When my mother asked legitimate planning questions, she was told to be quiet or be removed. That meeting was a performance, not a consultation. It strips citizens of their right to participate and further erodes public trust. If you approve this bylaw under the false label of housekeeping, an examination by an abundancement, integrity commissioner, or court may hold you responsible, not staff. They will ask why Council failed to scrutinize a bylaw that clearly changes land use rights. Any development approved under it could later be declared invalid. So today, I urge you to vote no on the housekeeping amendment. Direct staff to extract only true clerical edits, spelling, numbering, cross-references, into a genuine housekeeping bylaw, and require that all substantive policy changes return as standalone zoning amendments with full public notice, public meetings, and independent review. That is lawful. That is transparent. And that is how you restore confidence in this council. Respectfully, your duty is to not defend staff and their mistakes. Your duty is to defend the public's right to fair process and honest legislation. This amendment is not housekeeping. It is a Trojan horse.
Excuse me, you have 1 minute left. Thank
So
you.
please do not open the gate. Thank you.
Ah, very good. Thank you very much for the presentation. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does conclude our list of pre-registered speakers. So you may now open the floor to members of the gallery who want to speak. And if anyone does approach the microphone, please do state your name for the record.
So at this time, is there any other resident present who would like to make a presentation? Just a minute. I think I know this fellow.
If you would
Good
just
evening.
Please turn on the microphone.
Microphone, please.
Microphone, thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for the opportunity to be in front of you, Mr. Mayor and members of council and staff. Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I have had an opportunity to speak to staff on a number of issues, and I've been pleased to have that opportunity with the Agricultural Advisory Committee and with the Pelham greenhouse growers. And staff have been working with us to refine some of the definitions and are open to our comments that we're providing, especially regarding the definition of hoop house. So that's a colloquial term. It's something that means something to us in Niagara, but it doesn't necessarily mean something to people outside of this area. High tunnels, cold frames are other terms that are used. There's no real definition that OMAFA uses or the province uses in any respect. So we're working on that, and staff have been very receptive to a back and forth conversation on what that means. So yeah, I will be providing those comments in writing. I'm not really going to rely on what I've written so far tonight to discuss my comments, but I will, please be assured that I will be submitting everything that I speak to tonight. There's a couple other issues with agricultural uses that speak to the amount of frontage and the amount of area that are required. I'm just wondering the origin of those numbers. The one other thing is that the agricultural and the specialty agricultural zones in listing permitted uses identifies a dwelling on an existing vacant lot of record. Lot of record isn't defined, and it doesn't really make, to me, any sense that you can only have a single detached on an existing vacant lot of record. It's not vacant if there's a house on it. It also doesn't allow technically, and I've had this conversation with staff before, and I think it's maybe just gotten dropped in the consideration and formulation of the housekeeping amendment. That a single detached dwelling is a permitted use in the official plan under the good general agricultural and the specialty agricultural. And there is a kind of a broad reference to a vacant lot of record, but that's an or on a vacant lot of record. So I think something probably just got dropped along the way. One of the other things that isn't addressed in the zoning bylaw that I think should be is the additional residential unit. There's still another reference in the general provisions, and I'll highlight that in the comments. I think it's just something that needs to be cleaned up. I know that this is a complicated process, the housekeeping. Staff have been probably for a couple of years now since they made the last amendment, or council made the last amendment, trying to keep track of all of the things that are, not knit together and are issues with interpretation, and people like me bring them up and challenge them, and then they think, oh, I'm going to add that to the list. We're going to have to clarify that. So I'm thankful totally for this opportunity. Yeah, again, I'm not going to take too much time here. There's a couple of terms that are proposed under definitions: developable land area and disturbed area. Those are new definitions, but they're not referenced anywhere in the zoning bylaw. So That's a bit of an issue for me. Some of the other issues are mostly just wording and questions of interpretation. And I don't want to get into the specifics of those tonight because I think that's probably something that staff will have conversations with in between now and the recommendation report. And they will all be fleshed out in my comments and then in the report that comes forward to you at a later time. There are a couple of things, concerns that I had with respect to the vehicle service station. I think that the village commercial designation or zone and the downtown corridor zone go into other designations where those commercial uses aren't permitted. Again, that'll be in my comments as well. I think staff have done a good job of kind of covering most of the areas that they have highlighted as being of concerns to council, because I think you've wrestled with them and had to process zoning amendments to address things as you've gone along. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity to both have this conversation with you tonight and the ongoing conversation with staff. Happy to answer any questions you might have, but that's it for me for now.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Greg Larimer, you never mentioned your name.
Craig Larmour, sorry, Larmour. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much. I know that you mentioned the agricultural people group. I know that the because that was my life work. I had many phone calls from the committee members after the meeting where they had the planning meet with the committee, and they seemed to be overall very happy with the way everything was falling into place. So, would that be your take on the situation?
Yes, the Pelham Greenhouse Growers Group are the members that were able to meet with staff. We're very pleased with the conversation that we had and the willingness to work together cooperatively in resolving the issues.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers at this time? No.
Unfortunately, I just saw this notice and
Bill, please, what's your name?
Bill Heska.
Thank you, sir.
I know most of you. I was on the Cannabis Control Committee, so I had a fairly good stint with them. One of the concerns I do have, and I haven't had a chance to do much research on it, is the parking issue. In terms of parking requirements, in terms of in the commercial area as well as the residential area. The numbers that are being, it's downsized. It used to be 1.5 per unit, and then it was 1.25, and some say 1/4, and then or 1. And I've even heard some numbers less than 1. I just feel that when you go and you work, when I've lived in the town for over 40 years, the parking is becoming more and more and more of a challenge all the time. And it's along the main streets and in residential areas. I've been to some of the new areas there south of the MCC there, south of Port Robinson Road, and going there. And they have parking areas, but people tend to park on the street. And it's just, and then you go directly south of the MCC, and you got the parkettes along the side, which is enough for, supposed to be temporary parking. But I go by there often, and cars are parked there overnight. There's supposed to be overnight parking in the MCC. I just feel that there needs to be, I know that this has been brought up multiple times over the years, and I don't know if there's been a resolution and a final definition of what parking requirements are, but I strongly feel that it needs to be reconsidered. Most persons in Pelham, I've even retirees coming out of Toronto, you go and you look at some of these areas where they've moved into, how many cars they have in the driveway? Not one, usually 2, and maybe 1 parked in the garage. It's their classic cars in the garage. So that the parking requirements need to be more thoroughly understood, and there's more than reason for it. One is for emergencies. The other, number 2, is snow removal. In most of these areas, there's no provision where do you store the snow in a storm. You can't store it. You go along on Summerside there over by the MCC. They plow the road. The cars are locked in. They can't. Nobody's cleaning the area along that area for temporary parking. It's a nuisance, and somehow or another, the town has to go and restrict or increase the parking provisions, or put restrictions on what can be parked where and when, because it's a nuisance. Oftentimes you got to go and the delivery vehicles come, they park on the road, flash their lights. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 15 minutes, it could be a half an hour, whatever, depending what they're delivering. And now there's more and more courier services. Like in our neighborhood, I bet you in a day, if I see 4, I probably see 6 or 8 couriers a day in our area. And some of them coming around twice a day, morning and night. And I just feel that there's a major issue for parking and just the flow of traffic in residential as well as the commercial area.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Heska, for your comments. I'm sure the planning staff will take them into consideration. Any other residents wishing to make a presentation? Thank you, sir.
My name's Dave Dare. That's D-A-I-R, not the cookies.
Okay, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. My concerns concern the floor area calculations and the story calculations. I see that we're changing the calculation of dwelling unit floor area from room size to room size plus walls. Now, I understand MPAC is already doing that, but they don't include basements and they don't include attics, which seems to be included in the definition of stories. We are adding basements and now attics to the definition of a story, which from my perspective means that a raised bungalow is now a 3-story building, which seems ridiculous. Another concern is the setbacks for garages from the front of the property line or from the front wall of the building. That removes an entire genre of architecture where the garages are actually in front of the main building, which puts them closer to the road, which puts the house further back and quieter as far as living on a residential street. I don't see why it's necessary to have that rule. And that about covers what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Any other resident like to voice their concerns? Well, we have one at the back, please. Thank you, sir. Please state your name.
My name's Al Haywood. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and staff. Since we only have an allotted 5 minutes, I'll be as brief as I can, but as quick as I can. So I had a chance to take a deep dive into the zoning, and I really am quite surprised that this is a document written by professionals and reviewed by professionals in many cases. In particular, I didn't pay a lot of attention to the last amendment in 22, I guess it was, or August 24. I kind of thought housekeeping was, a small whisk and a little dustpan to clean up a few things, but I see some major changes that occurred. And the one I'm actually concerned with for this one is on Hurricane Road. It was formerly R1 302 and 303, and it's now under your new jurisdiction, R1 106 and R1 107. This has actually put 5 parcels of land that a zoning amendment was applied for, paid several $1,000s for, approved by council as a rezoning. And now when I look at the zoning that's on your zoning bylaw, there's 5 parcels that don't comply. And this is just a simple little error of calling it a maximum lot frontage instead of a minimum lot frontage. Like, nobody proofreads these things anymore, I guess. The other concern I have was that particular property at Hurricane Road had a special design done for the drainage. So that drainage plan was designed with 35% coverage in mind for the parcels of land there. And then I'm looking at the bylaw, and all of a sudden now it's 50%. Well, that throws the drainage plan kind of out to whack. It had a designed soak-away pit designed to accept the 35% coverage, which should have been grass around it, and now it's 50% coverage, and the pit doesn't work. So, you know, who's liable for that? Like, especially when the stakeholders aren't told, this is what we're thinking of doing, do you have any input? I realize you put it out in the public notice, but when there's a stakeholder that actually paid money to change the zoning bylaw to site-specific, I think there should be more consideration given. So that's with regard to hurricane, but there are several things in the bylaw. One of the things Ms. Richardson sent me was the table of changes, and I have a concern with the established building line. In the table, I don't think I'm referring to 3.8 established building line, and you changed it, and the front part of the statement is correct, but it says it'll be the average of the established building lines on the said adjacent lots, provided that no setback requirement calculated in accordance with this clause shall exceed the applicable setbacks required by the appropriate zone provision. So I'm referring to rural residential here. So in a rural, you can have a setback as low as 3 meters, garage setback at 6 meters. You can also have a lot coverage of 50%, where the minimum lot area is 0.4 of a hectare. So that's a 21,000 square foot bungalow I can build there, if I so choose to. And if I decide to do a 2-story, that's 42,000 square foot house that I can build there. I probably won't, but that's what it says. So, so established building line, in your chart, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Richardson, Section 6 on residential, you say that you've removed the requirement for a maximum front yard, and that's to offer flexibility for setbacks. However, in your chart, you did not include 6.7, which is the rural residential. I'm assuming that's an oversight because in your presentation you said that that was going to apply to all residential areas. So as I go through the zoning bylaw, I really have trouble with some of the numbers that are set out. If I look at R1, you're allowing a minimum lot area is 420 square meters, minimum lot frontage is 15 meters. That equates to a 15 meter by 28 meter depth lot. So when you go to R2, I can have, for a semi, 165 meters squared. Sorry, this is in R1 still. I can have 165 meters per dwelling unit, which is 330 altogether, versus 420 for a single. So I only need 330 for a semi, and that equates to a lot 12 by 27.5. So I mean, you're creating dimensions that can have jogs all over a new subdivision that might get created. And to me, this is a little bit nonsensical because now you're allowing a 6-meter dwelling, but if it doesn't have a garage, it's got to be 5.5 meters from the property line. That leaves you with a half-meter wide house. And if you do have a garage, I don't think too many people can build a garage less than 3 meters wide. You're left with half a meter for a house for a front entrance.
So you have 1 minute left. Thank you.
Okay, so there are several items in there. I'll put it in writing maybe to staff. I think when you get into definitions a little bit, you talk about back-to-back townhousing. I look at the terminology and I just kind of have to shake my head, because when you're dividing a dwelling back-to-back, it's divided vertically does not make sense. You're dividing it with a vertical plane. And I think it's just English language, but you're not dividing it vertically. They're side by side. You're dividing it with a vertical plane. And I just saw several definitions like that. And when you start talking about duplex, fourplex, triplex, the definitions aren't consistent. You say a duplex doesn't include a semi, a triplex doesn't include, a stacked town. But there are several definitions in there that I think could be brought together to say it more simply, but more succinctly. Like a triplex, it's 3 units. How you put it in there, does it matter? Whether it's 1 on top of 2, 2 on top of 1, or 3 side by side. Does it really matter? But I will, I'll put many of these in writing. I didn't have much of a chance to go through it in the 1 week that I did ask for to be on the list. I got missed in the list. And so I just think we really need to look, number one, at proofreading what gets done. And whether it's council, I know it's a huge document, and you can't compare them to the other one. I don't think that's expected, but I think you can expect it from your staff, and that they show you where the differences are and point those out. So thank you.
So I'm sure staff will look forward to your written submission, and we'll be going through it. So thank you for your time. Any other residents want to make a presentation? Okay, so please sit down. So what I'm going to do is, I think we went through speakers pretty fast tonight, so I'm going to use my discretion, and anyone who has spoken and who wants to come up and make a further presentation or further addition to the presentation, you're welcome to do that. Tom, you had the first presentation, so if you want to come up for 2 minutes, please do.
All right, thanks for having me back up.
Thank you.
I'm not going to go back to the presentation I already made yet. You all have copies of it, and I think the message is getting across. But I want to talk about some of the other things I saw. My friend here talked about some issues around floor area. One thing I want to point out to council is if we start including walls in the calculation of floor area, and I'm assuming MPAC is driving all this. I don't know if that's true or not. You don't say that anywhere, but I'm assuming they're driving it. The smaller the house, once you can start including exterior walls, the percentage increase in square foot would be higher the smaller the house you started with. So what that means eventually is property taxes will start getting regressive or slightly regressive. I don't have the data to really figure out the overall impact of that, but you'll be shifting tax burden, right, from larger homes to smaller homes if you start including walls in the calculations. I hope that concept's getting across. If you want to talk about it later, like we can do out examples on this. I don't know the overall impact. I don't know if it's insignificant or not, but I do know it will occur. Okay. And it also goes for whether you're including porches or decks or attics and things like that. A 2-story house, if you're including the attic in the square foot, is a lesser of an increase than if it was a 1-story house. So if attic space, basement space is starting to become a determinant factor of property taxes once you work it through impact, right? Smaller homes will carry a disproportionate share. So you just need to be aware of that. Moving on to, excuse me, home occupations. You talk about only one employee or one employee allowed. I think you need to improve your wordage to say on-site employees. I'm quite sure there's home occupations out there that may have employees that are out in the field that aren't really at the home. So just a little bit of legalese around that. Additional residential units, you talk about increasing the maximum size of an ARU in outside of urban areas, so rural and suburbia. Increasing the area to 1,200 square feet. When I grew up, that was a fair-sized house, right? So I don't really understand what we're trying to do with this. What I'm concerned about is you're going to end up allowing development per se without going through the process of subdividing the land and creating lots. I'm concerned about that. Are we going to start seeing acreage properties out in the rural world that are going to have 3 1,200 square foot houses lined up on the street now? Because when I read through that quickly, that's kind of what I was worried about. Okay, so just some awareness around that. Temporary uses. You talk about a tent requiring a 3 meter minimum setback. I don't really get this because there's a lot of other permanent encroachments that are now being allowed within 1 meter, 1 foot. A temporary tent, I don't understand why we have to set it back 9, 10 feet from the lot line if by definition it won't be there in a few days. So I don't understand why that bylaws changes there are being proposed. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you
For having me back up.
Yeah, again, I'm sure staff is anxiously awaiting your written presentation, and they will be going through it. Thank you. Now, if we go down the list of presenters, who will be the next one, Madam Clerk?
Through Mr. Mayor, you might just want to ask if anyone wants to come back. We don't
okay.
need to.
Yeah,
Perhaps
excellent.
they concluded their
That's why
comments.
this lady has the job. Is there any, of the other speakers, does anyone else want to have another 2 minutes? And I see, nope, you're next. Thank you for coming up again.
I actually wasn't. I helped my daughter go.
Oh, yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Yep.
So I didn't actually get my 5 minutes to speak, but I'll take 2. My name is Michelle Marcelovich, and my daughter referenced me in her conversation earlier.
Yes.
To Thomas's point about the ARU's 1,200 square feet, Ms. Richardson had mentioned that there was going to be a slightly larger allowance for units. I heard at the beginning. That slightly larger amount would be 1,200 square feet. Most of us who live in this room don't even live in a 1,200 square foot home. My neighbors actually have a 900 square foot home. Mine is exactly 1,200 square feet. That would mean under this housekeeping, you guys could allow up to 3 additional 1,200 square foot houses on my lot if the coverage permitted it. Not to mention, my neighbors who have a 900 square foot home, if they could do so, they would have a secondary dwelling unit larger than their residential unit that they currently have now. And I understand the reason behind this. We do have to help house people in our area regionally as well as throughout Canada. But with that being said, we do have to understand that we have to still be good neighbors. And in order to be good neighbors, we have to make sure that these amendments are done according to the Planning Act. And I'll respectfully say, as my daughter said, that these are not minor changes. These are substantive changes that should go through the full Section 34 review under the Planning Act. I respect that there is a process, but I do believe that in this situation, you might be being bamboozled a little bit, and I do hope that you'll sit back and take a full look before you vote yes to these and go through Section 34 and understand what it is that's required. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Any other previous speakers that would like to address the microphone? And we have another speaker. Thank you, sir.
Hi, thank you again. I just wondered if staff could have a look at driveway widths when they're reviewing this. And in particularly R1, where we have large lots on something like Short Hill Place or out in rural residential, where you have a 100-foot wide lot and you're going to build a substantial house with a 3-car garage. Right now, the maximum width of a driveway you can have is 6 meters. And I realize 6 meters is 20 feet. That's not a bad width, but you've stated it in its entirety. So that's 6 meters right up to the house, in my opinion, unless we call in front of the garage a parking area. But now you're starting to split hairs. What's the garage? Where's the parking area? In these larger zones, could we consider larger driveways, like where you have 100-foot frontage on a street? I don't see anything wrong with perhaps 25%, where you might have a 25-foot wide driveway. Or at the bare minimum, allow a 6-foot entrance for maybe 6 meters, and then it can widen out to match the garage width or something. But right now, it's very restrictive on some of these larger houses. If you take a walk down Short Hill Place, and I looked at it on air photography, every single driveway is greater than 6 meters. Now you get into loopholes, what's the sidewalk that runs up beside the driveway or whatever. But I think in these larger residential zones, permitting maybe up to 25% of the frontage or to a maximum of 7 or 7.5 meters is totally acceptable in my opinion. So I'd just like you to consider that, and I'll leave the rest to putting it in writing. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your time. Any other previous speakers that want to get another two minutes in? That's what we're here for tonight, and I don't want to shut anybody down early. We put the original restrictions on because we didn't know how many speakers we were going to get from the audience. Like I said, that's why I'm giving everyone an extra 2 minutes. Is there any other speaker? And again, we're still looking for any other speakers. If there's any other speakers out there that want to approach for the first time and get your 5 minutes, you're welcome to do so. I will once, twice, 3 times. Okay, thank you. Thank everyone who made a presentation. The planning staff definitely has their work cut out for them, and you get the submissions into them. They will indeed go through them, and when they bring the recommendation report, your comments will be addressed. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is 6:36 p.m. and we've received no emails to the clerk's email address. Therefore, you may close the public portion of the meeting and move to committee input.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, we do close the public input part of the meeting, and I will turn to committee. Anyone on the committee have any comments or questions? And I will go to Councilor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you to residents for your input. You made some very eloquent points tonight, and I'm sure we will be reviewing them. I made some notes, so we'll make sure that staff consider your input, and we'll be looking forward to that in the report. Just one clarification question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Dr. Duesling, with regards to the square footage for the ADU. That would only be in rural areas. Is that not correct? So it would not be within the town boundaries.
Through you, Councillor, that's correct. The number's actually going from current 93 meters square to 112 meters square in the rural area.
And is there a limit to the number of units that could be put onto that property?
Through you, Councillor, again, that limit would remain 3.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to say one other thing, that since I've been on this council, the provincial government has thrown a lot of stuff at municipal councils, changing. We would have one massive change of planning, and you would say, well, that's going to take a little while to digest that, but at least that's only one. And then 6 months later, we would get another massive change. It's all part of this build more houses faster. And believe me, there's things that are coming from across the lake to the municipal councils that we don't agree with. But at the same time, we have got to, they dictate to us, and then we have to make it happen. So I realize most people, I'm hoping most people realize that when they start intensifying, That's coming from that's from the province. That's not from anybody around this horseshoe. We didn't get together privately and take a vote. When we get this massive immigration coming in as a country, and the province wants Pelham to get up to 30,000 residents by, what was the year, Mr. CAO? Is that 2050? I'll ask the planning department. Yeah, 30,000 people they want in Pelham by 2050. That's not our decision. They give us a mandate and they say, make it work. And then we have got to make it work as a council. So I get some of the pain that's being felt in the neighborhood, believe me. But to blame it on council or to blame it on the staff, we got to work. If we don't do what the province wants, and the developer will just take it to the board, and we will lose, and it wastes everybody's time, and the decision is a foregone conclusion. So anyway, that's my say. Again, thank everyone for coming out here tonight, and especially the ones that approached the microphone and gave their ideas to planning staff. And Deputy Mayor Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo those thoughts of everybody that came out tonight. It's obviously an interested group in what's going on in our community, so thank you very much. I'm always welcoming a packed house. Am I able to ask a question of one of the presenters?
I wouldn't want to be the one to stop you. Go ahead, sir.
If I could invite Tom back to the microphone, if he's so inclined. You kind of breezed over lot coverage, and I'm not asking for a 20-minute presentation, but can you briefly just touch on that, the lot coverage concerns?
All right, so going back to the presentation, and so I'll be a bit blunt here. The developer was very creative in taking the town bylaw to the absolute max on the property he had to develop. The town bylaw was 50%, and I believe the official calculation of his coverage per the town rules was like 48 or 49 or something. He couldn't fit another square foot of floor space on that lot, okay? The town calculation, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't look at ground level development. It's waist high, or it's somewhere up here. I looked it up once. The triplex and the ASUs are there, and the elevated structure, the carport thing, are at 48% coverage on that lot, which is, okay, I kind of get that. But then I see a parking lot, right? He's got to put in spaces now for 8 units, right? Which I think total I'm gonna get it wrong, 12 parking spots or something like that. There's no front property. There's no front grass there on that development anymore. So when I'm thinking about coverage, I'm trying to think, what are we attempting to regulate here in the town of Pelham when we use 50% coverage? It's obviously not having the desired effect on Emmett Street. So I'm just coming back to it saying, he's met his legal requirement, but I don't think that's what people want on the street or in the town in general. So what I'm suggesting is start encompassing other things into your coverage calculation, driveways, parking lots, things like that, or lower that percentage or something in between. I don't know what the right numbers are. I just know what we ended up there, which met all requirements, isn't what I don't think anybody wanted that there. Okay? Good enough?
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Eckert. I'll go around the horseshoe one more time. Any further questions? Not seeing any, I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That then brings us to a presentation of resolutions, and I have a motion put forward by Deputy Mayor Eckert that committee receive report 2025-0245 statutory public meeting report for information, and that committee receive memo 2025-0246 November 6, 2025 open house comments for information, and that committee direct planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on the amendment for council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor, for a vote.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Not seeing any. Call the vote. All those in favor? See none opposed. Resolution carries.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr that committee receive the town's presentation for information. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you again. Any further comments, questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? See none opposed. Resolution carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rink that committee receive the written correspondence as listed on the agenda, and that committee receive the verbal presentations made by the public this evening. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings you to adjournment. I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik that the special committee meeting of the whole public meeting under the Planning Act be adjourned. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comments? Not seeing any. Call the vote. All those in favor? See none opposed. Meeting is done.
Thank you.